I had just finished piling the last shovelful of snow along my property line when I heard the shrieking from across the street that would change everything about my quiet suburban life in Boulder, Colorado. "What do you think you're doing?" The voice belonged to Patricia Morrison, president of the Meadowbrook Hills Homeowners Association, and she was storming toward me with the kind of fury usually reserved for natural disasters. Her blonde bob haircut bounced with each aggressive step, and her designer winter coat flapped open despite the February cold. I leaned on my shovel and wiped the sweat from my forehead. "Clearing my driveway, Patricia. You know, like everyone else after a snowstorm." "You are not just clearing your driveway," she hissed, jabbing a manicured finger at the substantial snow pile I had created. "You are creating an eyesore and blocking the street view. This is completely unacceptable." I looked at my handiwork. Sure, it was a significant pile of snow, but we had just gotten 16 inches overnight. Everyone on the block had similar piles. Mine just happened to be positioned along the eastern edge of my property, right where my lot met the street. "Patricia, I have to put the snow somewhere." I cleared my driveway and my sidewalk, just like the HOA rules require within 24 hours of snowfall. I put it on my property. "What's the problem?" Her face flushed red, and I could see the vein in her temple starting to throb. "The problem, Marcus Vance, is that this is a planned community with standards. You cannot just pile snow wherever you please. It needs to be distributed evenly and aesthetically across your landscaping. It's February in Colorado. Nobody can even see my landscaping under all this snow." "That is not the point." Patricia's voice had reached a pitch that was making the neighbor's dog bark. "You are deliberately creating this massive pile to be difficult, and it is blocking. It is obstructing. It is just unacceptable." I noticed her stumble over her words, which was unusual for Patricia. She was normally incredibly articulate, especially when she was citing HOA regulations. I had been living in Meadowbrook Hills for 3 years, and in that time, Patricia had complained about my mailbox being the wrong shade of black, my lawn being a 1/4 inch too tall, and my holiday decorations being up 2 days past the approved deadline. She was thorough and precise in her criticism. This scattered anger seemed different. "Show me the specific regulation I'm violating," I said calmly. "If I'm breaking an HOA rule, I'll fix it." Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "I don't need to cite regulations to you. I am the HOA president. When I say something is unacceptable, it is unacceptable. You have until tomorrow morning to remove this snow pile, or you will face fines." "Remove it." "Patricia, where exactly am I supposed to put 16 inches of snow from a 50-foot driveway? Should I bag it up and take it to the dump?" "That is not my problem. Figure it out, or the fines start at $100 per day." She spun on her heel and marched back toward her house, which sat directly across the street from mine. I watched her go, confusion mixing with irritation. Something about this whole interaction felt off. Patricia was always unreasonable, but she was never this scattered or this angry without having her regulation book in hand. I looked back at my snow pile, trying to see what could possibly be offensive about it. That's when I noticed something strange. From where I stood, I could see that my snow pile was positioned right at the edge of my property line, which I knew exactly because I had the survey done when I bought the house. The pile extended maybe 6 feet into my yard and about 8 feet along the property line. But here was the interesting part. On the other side of that property line, where the street should have been, there was a paved surface that extended from Patricia's driveway. I walked closer to examine it. Under the packed snow that cars had been driving over, I could see dark asphalt. I had never really paid attention before because in the 3 years I had lived here, I had just assumed it was part of the street. But looking at it now, really looking at it, I realized that Patricia's driveway extended much further than it should have. A standard driveway runs from the garage to the street. Patricia's driveway did that. But then it also extended about 6 feet along what should have been public street parking. It essentially gave her house 2 parking spaces directly in front, where every other house on the block only had 1 driveway entrance and had to use the street for additional parking. My snow pile was sitting right at the edge of this extended section, blocking access to it. I pulled out my phone and took several pictures. Then I went inside, made myself a cup of coffee, and started doing some research. I pulled up the county assessor's website and looked at the property maps for our neighborhood. According to the official survey, Patricia's property line ended where I thought it did. That extended section of driveway was technically on public right-of-way. I then checked the HOA regulations, all 147 pages of them, which I had saved as a PDF. There was nothing about snow pile aesthetics. There were rules about clearing sidewalks and driveways, which I had followed, but nothing about where on your property you could pile the removed snow. The next morning, I woke up to find a formal violation notice zip-tied to my mailbox. It cited Section 4.7 of the HOA regulations. No homeowner shall create or maintain any condition that negatively impacts the aesthetic harmony of the community. The notice claimed my snow pile violated this provision and gave me 24 hours to remedy the situation or face daily fines of $100. Section 4.7 was the catch-all provision that Patricia loved to use because it was vague enough to apply to almost anything she personally disliked. I had seen her use it to make the Johnsons repaint their shutters because she thought the shade of gray was too dark, and to force the Chens to remove a decorative garden gnome. I was considering my options when my doorbell rang. It was my next-door neighbor, Robert Chen, holding a cup of coffee and looking amused. "Got your violation notice, I see," he said, nodding toward the paper in my hand. "You saw. I watched Patricia storm over there at 7 in the morning to put it up. She looked furious." "What did you do to piss her off this time?" "I piled snow on my own property." I showed him the notice. Robert read it and shook his head. Section 4.7, the old faithful. "You know what's funny, though? My snow pile is actually bigger than yours, and it's right in my front yard. So is the Hendersons down the street, but you're the only one who got a notice. That's because mine is blocking something she wants access to." I walked Robert over to the property line and showed him what I had discovered. His eyes widened as he understood. "Holy crap. She extended her driveway onto public property. Looks like it. I'm going to check with the city to be sure, but according to the county assessor's map, that's not her property." Robert let out a low whistle. "No wonder she's freaking out. If the city finds out, they'll make her rip it up." "Do you know how much that costs?" "I'm going to find out." I took another look at the extended driveway, now with fresh eyes. It was professionally done, matching the rest of her driveway perfectly. This wasn't some sloppy DIY project. She had paid real money to have this done, which meant she had known exactly what she was doing. That afternoon, I drove to the Boulder Municipal Building and went to the Public Works Department. A tired-looking clerk named Jennifer helped me access the records for my street. I explained that I was trying to verify property lines and right-of-way boundaries. "Let me pull up the survey for Meadowbrook Hills," Jennifer said, typing on her computer. "That's a relatively new development, right? Built in 2018. "That's right." She pulled up a detailed map on her screen. "Okay, what's your address?" I gave it to her and she zoomed in. "Here you are. And you're asking about the property line between your lot and the street. Actually, I'm asking about my neighbor's property, the house directly across from me. I gave her Patricia's address. Jennifer's fingers flew across the keyboard. She pulled up the survey, then frowned. Huh, that's interesting. What is? There's a note here from 2019. Someone requested verification of the right-of-way boundaries for this property. The city sent an inspector out because there was a question about an encroachment. My heart rate picked up. What did the inspector find? Let me see. She clicked through several more screens. Okay, here's the report. The inspector noted that the property owner had extended their driveway approximately 6 feet into the public right-of-way without a permit. The property owner was sent a notice to obtain a proper encroachment permit or remove the unauthorized improvement. And did they get the permit? Jennifer checked another database. No permit was ever issued for that address. Looks like it just fell through the cracks. You know how it is, we're understaffed, and if the property owner doesn't respond and no one else complains. She shrugged apologetically. So it's definitely an illegal extension. According to this, yes. The property owner was supposed to either get it permitted, which requires city council approval and is rarely granted for driveway extensions, or remove it. They did neither. What happens now that someone is bringing it up again? Jennifer's expression became more professional. Well, if you're filing a formal complaint, we would need to send another inspector out. If they verify the encroachment is still there without a permit, the property owner would be notified and given a deadline to remove it. If they don't comply, the city can remove it and bill the property owner plus penalties. I'd like to file that complaint. Jennifer pulled out a form. I'll need your information and a description of the encroachment. Do you have any photos? I showed her the pictures on my phone. She nodded as she looked through them. These are helpful. Give me about 10 minutes to get this processed, and we'll get an inspector out there within the next week. As I filled out the paperwork, I felt a mixture of satisfaction and nervousness. Patricia had made my life difficult for 3 years with her petty complaints and arbitrary enforcement of vague HOA rules. But going after her like this felt like escalation. Then again, she was the one who had started this fight over a snow pile, and she was the one who had built an illegal driveway extension in the first place. When I got home, there was another notice on my door. This one informed me that since I had failed to comply with the original violation notice, I was now being fined $100 per day until the snow pile was removed. The fine would appear on my next HOA assessment. I took a picture of this notice too, and added it to a folder I was building on my computer. Then, I sent an email to the HOA board, which consisted of Patricia and 4 other members. I stated that I believed the violation notice was being issued in bad faith, that my snow pile was not in violation of any specific HOA regulation, and that I was requesting a formal hearing before the board to dispute the fine. The response came back within an hour from Patricia's personal email. Your hearing is scheduled for next month's board meeting on March 15th. Your fines will continue to accrue until the violation is remedied, regardless of your dispute. March 15th was 6 weeks away. At $100 per day, that would be over $4,000 in fines, even though the snow would probably melt naturally within a couple of weeks. I called my real estate attorney, Patricia Morrison, who I had used when buying the house. Yes, he had the same last name as Patricia. I had learned early on that they were cousins, but Derek couldn't stand her. Marcus, good to hear from you, Derek said when he picked up. What can I do for you? I explained the situation, including the violation notice, the fines, and what I had discovered about Patricia's driveway. Derek was quiet for a moment after I finished. That's quite a mess Patricia has gotten herself into. Let me ask you something. Do you want to resolve this quietly, or are you looking to push back? I'm tired of her targeting me with these petty complaints. If I back down now, it's just going to get worse. Plus, she built an illegal driveway extension. That's not petty, that's actually wrong. I agree with you on that. Okay, here's what we'll do. First, I'm going to send a letter to the HOA board on your behalf, stating that the fines are improper and that you'll be seeking legal remedies if they're not withdrawn. Second, I'll reach out to the city to check on the status of your complaint. Third, we'll prepare for that board meeting, though I suspect once the city inspector shows up, Patricia's going to have bigger problems than your snow pile. Thanks, Derek. Send me your bill. First letter is on the house. Patricia's made enough people miserable in that neighborhood. It's about time someone stood up to her. Over the next few days, I watched as the snow pile gradually shrank from daytime melting and nighttime freezing. Patricia's car remained parked in her garage, and I noticed she was parking her husband's truck on the street several houses down instead of in the extended driveway area. She knew I was onto something. The following Tuesday, a white city truck pulled up in front of Patricia's house. A man in a reflective vest got out, carrying a clipboard and a measuring tape. I watched from my living room window as he examined the driveway extension, took measurements, and marked several spots with orange spray paint. 10 minutes into his inspection, Patricia came rushing out of her house. Even from across the street, I could see she was agitated. She spoke with the inspector for several minutes, gesturing animatedly. The inspector remained calm, showing her his clipboard and pointing to different areas of the driveway. Finally, Patricia went back inside and the inspector finished his work, taking photos and making notes. That evening, I got a call from Jennifer at Public Works. "Mr. Vance, I wanted to let you know that our inspector confirmed the encroachment. We've issued a notice to the property owner requiring removal of the unauthorized improvement within 30 days. If it's not removed, we'll do it ourselves and bill them for it, plus a penalty of $5,000. 30 days. That's longer than I expected. We have to give property owners reasonable time to hire a contractor. Ripping up a driveway isn't something you can do overnight." The notice also informs her that she's being assessed a fine of $500 for maintaining an unpermitted structure in the right-of-way, plus $50 per day for every day it's been there since the original notice in 2019. I could hear her calculator clicking. That's about 2 years and 9 months, so roughly $50,000 in accumulated fines. I almost dropped the phone. $50,000. Municipal code is pretty clear about this stuff. When you build on public property without permission, especially after being told not to, the penalties add up fast. She can appeal it, but she'd have to prove that she didn't receive the original notice or that she had some legitimate reason for not complying. Based on our records, the original notice was delivered by certified mail and signed for. After I hung up, I sat on my couch and tried to process this information. What had started as Patricia yelling at me about a snow pile had turned into her facing tens of thousands of dollars in fines and the cost of ripping up part of her driveway. Part of me felt bad. Part of me remembered every petty complaint, every unreasonable fine, every time she had made my life and my neighbors' lives harder for no good reason. The next morning, I found a handwritten note in my mailbox. It was from Patricia, and her normally perfect handwriting was shaky and rushed. "Marcus, I think we both got carried away here. I'm willing to withdraw the violation notice and fines against you if you're willing to contact the city and withdraw your complaint. This has gotten out of hand and we should handle this as neighbors. Patricia." I read the note 3 times. It was the first time in 3 years that Patricia had ever addressed me as a neighbor rather than as a subject of the HOA. It was also clearly a panic move on her part. I called Derek and read him the note. "Don't respond to that directly," he advised. "If you withdraw your complaint now, you're basically letting her keep an illegal structure on public property. Plus, she didn't actually withdraw the fines yet. She's just saying she's willing to. This is a negotiating tactic." "So what do I do?" "Nothing. Let the process play out. The city is handling their issue with her driveway, which is separate from your HOA dispute. Speaking of which, I sent the letter to the board yesterday. You should see the violation notices withdrawn within a few days." No board member wants to back Patricia on this once they understand the situation. Derek was right. 2 days later, I received an official letter from the HOA board secretary, a man named Thomas Park who lived 4 streets over. The letter stated that upon review, the board had determined that my snow pile did not constitute a violation of Section 4.7, and all associated fines were being withdrawn. The letter also noted that the board would be reviewing its snow removal policies to provide clearer guidance to homeowners in the future. There was no mention of Patricia in the letter, but I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that there had been an emergency board meeting where the other 4 members had overruled her. Robert Chen, whose wife Deanne was on the board, told me it had gotten heated. Deanne said Patricia kept insisting that you were deliberately trying to sabotage her, that you knew about her driveway and put the snow pile there on purpose. Robert told me over beers in his garage the following Saturday. But the other board members pointed out that even if that were true, which it probably isn't, you didn't make her build an illegal driveway. They told her she was letting personal issues cloud her judgment as HOA president. What did she say to that? Apparently, she said that she was going to fight the city's order and that everyone would see that she had done nothing wrong. Diane said it was uncomfortable. Patricia's been HOA president since the neighborhood was built. She basically sees it as her personal kingdom. The snow continued to melt. By the end of February, my controversial snow pile was completely gone, leaving behind no evidence of the drama it had caused. Patricia's driveway extension, however, remained very much in evidence, with the orange spray paint marks from the city inspector still visible. March arrived, and with it came the deadline for Patricia to comply with the city's order. I didn't watch her house obsessively, but I did notice that, as the deadline approached, there was no sign of any contractors or construction equipment. On March 2nd, the white city truck returned, along with a larger truck pulling a trailer with a small excavator. I watched as city workers cordoned off the area with cones and began the process of removing Patricia's driveway extension. It took them most of the day. They used the excavator to break up the asphalt, then loaded the chunks into a dump truck. By evening, there was a large patch of dirt where the extended section had been. Patricia's car was gone all day. Her husband, a quiet man named George who worked in Denver, came home at his usual time and stared at the destruction for a long moment before pulling into their garage and closing the door. The March 15th HOA board meeting arrived. I almost didn't go, since my violation had been withdrawn and the whole snow pile issue was moot. But Derek advised me to attend. "Patricia's going to spin a narrative about this," he said. "You should be there to represent yourself and make sure the other homeowners know the truth." The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a building near the neighborhood entrance that was used for HOA gatherings and the occasional resident party. About 30 people showed up, which was a huge turnout compared to the usual 5 or 6. Word had spread about the drama. Patricia stood at the front of the room behind a folding table, looking significantly less composed than usual. The other 4 board members sat with her: Thomas Park, Deanne Chen, Carol Henderson, and Raj Patel. Patricia's normally perfect appearance was slightly off. Her hair wasn't quite as carefully styled and she wore less makeup than usual. "Let's call this meeting to order," Patricia said, her voice tight. "We have several items on the agenda tonight. First, we need to discuss the neighborhood spring cleanup day. Second, we need to review the budget for landscaping improvements. Third, there's a matter regarding property line disputes and city involvement that we need to address." Thomas Park cleared his throat. "Patricia, I think we should address the third item first, given the interest in it." He gestured at the crowded room. Patricia's jaw clenched. "Fine. As some of you may be aware, there was recently a dispute regarding snow removal that escalated unnecessarily. Mr. Vance, who is here tonight, filed a complaint with the city about my property, which resulted in significant expenses and disruption." I raised my hand. "That's not exactly accurate." Patricia glared at me. "You filed a complaint with Public Works about my driveway." "I filed a complaint about an illegal structure encroaching on public property," I corrected. "After you threatened me with thousands of dollars in fines over a snow pile that wasn't violating any actual HOA regulation. A snow pile that, I should note, was blocking your access to said illegal structure." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Deanne Chen spoke up from the board table. "For the record, the board reviewed Marcus's situation and determined that no violation occurred. The fines that were threatened were issued without board consensus and have been withdrawn." Patricia's face flushed red. "The fines were issued under my authority as HOA president to enforce our community standards." "You don't have unilateral authority," Thomas said firmly. "The governing documents are clear that violation notices require board approval for anything not explicitly defined in the regulations. Section 4.7 is deliberately broad and requires board consensus to apply." "I have been running this HOA for 7 years, Patricia snapped. "I have kept this neighborhood beautiful and maintained our property values, and this is the thanks I get: being second-guessed and having my decisions undermined." Robert Chen, sitting next to me in the audience, raised his hand. "Patricia, I think the issue is that you've been running the HOA like it's your personal fiefdom. You issue violations based on what you personally like or don't like, not based on what the rules actually say. We've all put up with it because it was easier than fighting. But Marcus fought back, and it turns out you had a pretty big secret you were trying to protect. I built that driveway extension 7 years ago when the neighborhood was new," Patricia said, her voice rising. "The property lines weren't even clearly marked. It was an honest mistake." "An honest mistake that you were notified about in 2019 and did nothing to fix," I said. "I saw the city records. You got a certified letter telling you to either get a permit or remove it, and you ignored it." Patricia pointed a shaking finger at me. "You have been a problem resident since the day you moved in. Your mailbox was the wrong color. Your lawn is always too long. You put up Christmas decorations that violated our holiday display guidelines. This is just more of the same." I stood up. My mailbox was slate black instead of jet black, a difference nobody could see without a color swatch. My lawn was a 1/4 inch longer than the maximum height, which required you to measure it with a ruler. And my Christmas decorations were up for 2 days past the deadline because I was out of town for work. You have made my life and the lives of other residents in this neighborhood miserable with your petty complaints, and it's clear now that you were projecting. You were breaking the rules in a significant way, and you couldn't stand anyone else even bending them slightly. The room erupted in conversation. Several other residents started sharing their own stories of unreasonable complaints from Patricia. The Johnsons talked about being forced to repaint their shutters. The Hendersons mentioned being fined for having the wrong type of mulch in their flower beds. A couple I didn't know well said Patricia had threatened them with fines because their daughter's sidewalk chalk drawings were visible from the street. "Enough," Patricia shouted. "This meeting is out of order. Everyone except board members needs to leave. Now." Thomas Park stood up. "Actually, Patricia, HOA meetings are required to be open to all residents unless we're in executive session discussing specific legal or personnel matters. And I think we're past the point where you get to decide what happens. I'm calling for a vote of no confidence in your leadership as HOA president." Patricia looked stunned. "You can't do that." "I can, and I am." Thomas looked at the other board members. "Do I have a second?" "Seconded," Deanne Chen said immediately. "All in favor of removing Patricia Morrison as HOA president?" Thomas asked. 4 hands went up. Patricia's didn't. The motion carries. "Patricia, you're no longer HOA president. You'll remain on the board as a regular member until your term expires, but you no longer have any special authority." Patricia gathered her papers with shaking hands. "Fine. This is fine. You'll all see what happens when someone else tries to run things. This neighborhood will fall apart." She stood up and walked out of the clubhouse, leaving her former board members and the assembled residents in stunned silence. Thomas cleared his throat. "Okay. Well, that was dramatic. The board will need to elect a new president at our next meeting. In the meantime, all violation notices are suspended pending a full review of our enforcement procedures. We're clearly going to need to revise our approach to make sure we're being fair and consistent." The meeting continued for another hour, but the energy was different. People were actually discussing ideas and concerns instead of being lectured at. It felt like a neighborhood association rather than a dictatorship. As people filed out afterward, several neighbors came up to thank me for standing up to Patricia. Robert clapped me on the shoulder. "You did good, man. That was a long time coming." "I just didn't want to pay fines for a snow pile," I said. "Yeah, but you didn't back down when she tried to bully you. That's what made the difference." Over the next few weeks, life in Meadowbrook Hills slowly returned to normal. Or rather, to a new normal that was significantly more relaxed than before. The board, now led by Thomas Park as interim president, sent out a survey asking residents what rules they felt were important and what rules seemed unnecessarily restrictive. The response was overwhelming. Patricia kept a low profile. Her house was still there, of course, and I would see her coming and going occasionally, but she didn't speak to anyone. The patch of dirt where her driveway extension had been was eventually seeded with grass, though it would be a while before it matched the rest of her lawn. In April, I received a certified letter from the city. It informed me that Patricia Morrison had been assessed fines totaling $53,400 for the unpermitted encroachment, and that she had set up a payment plan with the city to settle the debt. The letter thanked me for bringing the matter to their attention, and noted that they were conducting a review of all properties in the area to identify any other unpermitted structures. I also received a bill from Derek for his legal services. It was surprisingly reasonable, only about $800 for all the letters and advice. Given that Patricia had been threatening me with over $4,000 in fines, I considered it money well spent. The June HOA board election brought significant changes. Patricia didn't run for re-election. 3 new members joined the board, including Robert Chen, who ran on a platform of common sense rules, fairly enforced. The new board's first action was to completely rewrite the violation enforcement procedures, requiring photographic evidence, specific rule citations, and board approval for any fine over $25. I was in my backyard one Saturday in July, grilling burgers and enjoying the summer weather when my doorbell rang. I walked around to the front and found Patricia standing on my porch. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. The confidence and anger that had always surrounded her like an aura were gone. "Marcus," she said quietly, "do you have a minute?" I considered telling her no, but curiosity won out. "Sure." She looked down at her hands. "I wanted to apologize for the snow pile thing and for everything before that. You were right. I was projecting. I knew I had done something wrong with the driveway, and every time I saw something that bent the rules even slightly, it made me furious. Like, how dare anyone else break rules when I was living with this secret? "Why did you do it?" I asked. "Build the extension, I mean." "Because I wanted the extra parking, because I thought I could get away with it, because this was my neighborhood, you know. George and I were the first ones to buy here when it was just a model home and dirt lots. I was HOA president from day one. I thought that gave me certain privileges." She laughed bitterly. "Turns out it doesn't. Patricia, you could have just asked for a variance or whatever the proper process was. I know. But I thought it would be denied and I wanted what I wanted. So I just did it and hoped no one would notice. And for 7 years no one did. Or at least, no one said anything. But I knew it was wrong, and that knowledge ate at me, made me controlling about everything else. I didn't know what to say to that. It was the most honest conversation I had ever had with her. "Anyway," she continued, "I'm paying the city in installments. It's going to take me 3 years to pay off the fines. George is furious with me. We almost separated over it. And I'm not HOA president anymore, which was basically my entire identity. So I'm trying to figure out who I am now, and part of that is apologizing to the people I hurt." She looked up at me. "I made your life harder than it needed to be, and I'm sorry." "I appreciate that," I said, and I meant it. I was still angry about the whole situation, but seeing Patricia humbled and genuinely remorseful took some of the edge off. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," she said. "I just wanted you to know that I know I was wrong. About the driveway, about the HOA stuff, all of it." She turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, your lawn looks nice. You do a good job keeping up your property." After she left, I went back to my grill and flipped the burgers. Robert came over from next door, having seen Patricia leave. "What did she want?" he asked, to apologize. "No kidding, how was it?" Surprisingly genuine, actually. I think losing everything humbled her. Robert grabbed a beer from my cooler and sat down. "You know what's funny? I drove by her house yesterday, and the grass where the driveway extension is finally starting to fill in. In a few months, you won't even be able to tell it was there, like the whole thing never happened." "Except it did happen," I said. "And it cost her $50,000 and her position as HOA president. All because she couldn't let a snow pile go," Robert mused. "That's got to be the most expensive tantrum in Meadowbrook Hills history." I laughed. "When you put it that way, it does sound ridiculous." The whole thing was ridiculous. But hey, at least something good came out of it. The HOA is actually reasonable now. Did you see the new guidelines they published? You're allowed to have your holiday decorations up for a whole week after the holiday now. A whole week. We're practically anarchists. I raised my beer. "To reasonable rules and the death of petty tyranny." Robert clinked his bottle against mine. "And to snow piles that uncover the truth." The rest of the summer passed peacefully. The new HOA board proved to be fair and practical in their enforcement. Violations were issued only when someone was genuinely creating a problem for others, not for trivial aesthetic differences. The neighborhood felt more relaxed, more like an actual community. In September, I was cleaning out my garage when I found the violation notice that Patricia had zip-tied to my mailbox back in February. I had kept it as part of my documentation, but I didn't need it anymore. The whole situation was resolved. I was about to throw it away when I decided to keep it instead, tucking it into a folder in my office. It was a reminder that sometimes standing up for yourself, even over something as simple as a snow pile, could lead to bigger truths being revealed. Patricia remained a quiet presence in the neighborhood. She and George worked on their marriage, according to the neighborhood gossip network, which was alive and well. She joined the community garden committee, which was not part of the HOA, and apparently discovered a talent for growing tomatoes. People slowly began to warm to her again, or at least stopped actively avoiding her. As for me, life went back to normal. I mowed my lawn, kept my mailbox the appropriate color, and when winter came around again, I cleared my driveway just like everyone else. But when it came time to pile the snow, I made sure to spread it evenly across my front yard, just to avoid any potential drama. The second winter in our post, Patricia as President era brought even more snow than the previous year. One morning, after a particularly heavy snowfall, I was out clearing my driveway when Patricia came out to do the same. We worked in silence for a while, then she called across the street. "Need any help?" I looked up, surprised. "I'm good, thanks." She nodded and went back to shoveling. But the offer had been made, and it meant something. We weren't friends, and we probably never would be. But we were neighbors, and maybe that was enough. Later that day, the new HOA president, Thomas Park, sent out an email to all residents. It included photos of the neighborhood covered in fresh snow, looking like a winter wonderland, and a reminder about the 24-hour snow removal rule. But then it added something new. Remember, where you pile your snow is your choice, as long as it's on your property. The HOA is here to help maintain our community, not to dictate every detail of how you care for your home. Let's all be reasonable, support each other, and remember that we're all neighbors first. I read the email twice, thinking about how much had changed in less than a year. All because of a snow pile and an illegal driveway extension. All because someone had finally said no to unreasonable demands and uncovered a secret that had been hiding in plain sight. Robert came over that evening with a bottle of wine. "Did you see Thomas's email?" I swear, he's taking shots at Patricia without even naming her. "It's a different world now," I agreed. "You know what I heard?" Robert said, settling into my couch. "Deanne told me that Patricia's actually been helpful on the board recently. Like she's not trying to control everything anymore. She actually listens to other people's ideas. People can change," I said, "when they're forced to. Or when they finally face consequences for their actions," Robert added. "For 7 years she got away with everything. The driveway, the petty violations, all of it. But the universe, or the city of Boulder at least, caught up with her eventually." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the snow fall outside. Somewhere across the street, Patricia was probably dealing with her own thoughts, her own regrets, her own journey toward becoming a better neighbor and a better person. As for me, I was just grateful that I had trusted my instincts, stood my ground, and refused to be bullied. The snow pile that had started everything was long gone, melted into memory. But the lessons it taught, about standing up for yourself, and about how secrets have a way of coming to light, those would last much longer. The next morning, I woke up to find that someone had cleared the public sidewalk in front of my house. Not just mine, but the entire block. I looked outside and saw George Morrison walking back to his house, snow shovel in hand. He saw me watching and gave a small wave. I waved back. It was a small gesture, but it meant something. It meant that maybe the Morrison family was trying to make amends in their own way. Maybe they were learning to be the kind of neighbors they should have been all along. I got dressed and went outside to thank George, but he had already gone inside. Instead, I found a note tucked into my storm door. It was from Patricia, written in her precise handwriting. Marcus, George and I are going to try to do better, starting with helping out around the neighborhood without being asked and without expecting anything in return. Thank you for forcing me to see what I had become. Patricia. I folded the note and put it in my pocket. Then I grabbed my own shovel and went to clear the sidewalk in front of the elderly couple's house, 3 doors down. They struggled with snow removal, and the old me might have thought it wasn't my problem. But the experience with Patricia had taught me something too. Communities work better when people help each other instead of just enforcing rules. By noon, several neighbors were out helping others with snow removal. It wasn't organized or required. It was just people being decent to each other. Robert helped the Hendersons. The Johnsons helped a single mom who worked long hours. Even Patricia came out again and helped clear the community mailbox area. Thomas Park stood at the corner, watching the spontaneous community effort, and I saw him smile. This was what an HOA should encourage, I thought. Not perfect paint colors and precisely measured grass heights, but actual neighborly behavior and community support. The rest of winter passed without incident. No violation notices appeared on anyone's mailboxes. No one was threatened with fines for minor aesthetic issues. The HOA focused on maintaining common areas, organizing community events, and addressing actual problems like broken streetlights and drainage issues. When spring arrived and the last of the snow melted, it revealed a neighborhood that looked much the same as it had the year before, but felt completely different. The grass where Patricia's illegal driveway extension had been was now fully grown in, seamlessly matching the rest of her lawn. The only evidence of what had happened was in the memories of those who had lived through it. At the spring HOA meeting, the board presented the results of their rule review process. About 30% of the old regulations had been eliminated as unnecessarily restrictive. The remaining rules were rewritten to be clear and specific, with objective standards instead of subjective judgments. Section 4.7, the catch-all aesthetic provision that Patricia had weaponized so many times, was completely removed. "We're a community of adults," Thomas said at the meeting. "We don't need someone to police every detail of our lives. We need clear, reasonable rules that protect property values and quality of life, and we need to enforce them fairly and consistently. That's what we're committed to doing." The room full of residents applauded. Patricia, sitting in the back row where she had relegated herself since losing the presidency, clapped along with everyone else. She caught my eye across the room and gave a small nod. I nodded back. Life in Meadowbrook Hills continued. Seasons changed, neighbors came and went, and the drama of the snow pile and the illegal driveway gradually became just another story that people told, usually with a laugh and a shake of the head. "Remember when Patricia lost it over Marcus's snow pile?" they would say. And it turned out she had that whole illegal driveway thing going on. What a mess that was. As for me, I learned to appreciate the peace that came from standing up for myself, from not backing down when someone tried to bully me into compliance. I also learned that sometimes the people who seem the most confident and self-righteous are the ones carrying the biggest secrets and the most guilt. The HOA continued to function smoothly under its new leadership. Property values in Meadowbrook Hills actually increased, which put to rest Patricia's dire predictions about the neighborhood falling apart without her iron-fisted control. Turns out people are more interested in buying homes in friendly communities than in places run like military installations. 2 years after the snow pile incident, I was at a neighborhood barbecue when Patricia approached me. We had been cordial over the past couple of years, exchanging pleasantries when we saw each other, but nothing more. "Marcus," she said, "I wanted you to know that I finally finished paying off the city fines. Last payment went through yesterday." "That's great, Patricia. I know it was a burden." It was, but it was also what I deserved. I broke the law, ignored warnings, and then tried to use my position to punish anyone who might expose me. I earned every dollar of those fines. She paused. "George and I are thinking about moving. Fresh start somewhere else, but I wanted to clear the air with you completely before we did." "I appreciate that, and for what it's worth, you've been a good neighbor these past couple of years." She smiled, a genuine expression I had rarely seen from her. "That's kind of you to say. I learned a lot from this whole experience." "Mostly, I learned that controlling everything doesn't actually give you control. It just makes you exhausted and paranoid and alone." She looked around at the barbecue, at neighbors laughing and talking and enjoying each other's company. "This is what I should have wanted all along. People being happy and getting along, not perfect paint colors and regulation height grass." "We all make mistakes," I said. "The important thing is learning from them." Patricia nodded. "Well, I learned from mine, the hard way, but I learned. I hope wherever George and I end up, I can be the kind of neighbor I should have been here from the start." They moved in August. A young family with 2 kids bought their house. The new neighbors were friendly and easygoing, and they hosted a moving-in party where they met everyone on the block. No one told them about Patricia and the drama, though I'm sure they eventually heard the stories. Every neighborhood has its history. I'm still living in Meadowbrook Hills, still enjoying my home and my neighbors. When winter comes and the snow falls, I clear my driveway and pile the snow wherever it makes sense, usually spread across my front yard. And I always take a moment to remember that strange confrontation with Patricia, when she screamed at me about a snow pile and set in motion a chain of events that would change everything. It's funny how life works sometimes. A simple pile of snow, placed in an inconvenient location, revealed an illegal driveway extension and brought down a petty tyrant's regime. It proved that secrets eventually come to light, that bullies eventually face consequences, and that standing up for yourself, even over something small, can lead to bigger changes than you ever imagined. The HOA continues to function well. We have rules, but they're reasonable ones, enforced fairly. We have standards, but they're designed to maintain property values and quality of life, not to feed someone's need for control. And we have a community, a real one, where neighbors help each other and look out for one another. All because one winter day, I put a pile of snow on my property line, and Patricia Morrison made the mistake of screaming about it instead of letting it go. That snow pile melted long ago, but its impact on our neighborhood will last for years to come.